Hi, I'm Linda Ty.
And I'm Wendy Williams from connectagain.org. I'm a marriage and relationship educator, and I'm from the Framingham area. And I am very excited to be here today to talk to you about what marriages can be and how to strengthen them.
Sounds great. And I am a holistic health coach, and I've been married for almost 20 years. So Wendy, I know one thing that I think about a lot is, and I really enjoy listening to you talk about the myths. There's a lot of myths out there because it really does feel like if you listen to the news or you talk to people, you know, there's a ton of divorce out there. It feels like the majority of marriages are not staying together. Is that true?
Right. Actually, there are three myths that I like to talk about, and the one that you're hitting on right now is the divorce rate. That the divorce rate is very widely reported to be 50%. Half of all marriages walking down the aisle are going to end in divorce. And that actually is an erroneous statistic. It
Really?
is not true. Right. A number of people have unpacked that. Do you remember a few years ago when the statistics were out about, not ADD, but the childhood disorder? Oh gosh, I'm at a loss. But the statistics were that if you took vaccinations, that your child would be at a loss. Do you remember the?
I don't know which vaccination. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, you'd get, there'd be problems with your child if you took this if you used vaccinations, and we now know that data is wrong. That statistical analysis was wrong, but people just kind of have driven that, and you know that's a lot in the news today. Very similarly, and I think that we're going to be having these conversations about the divorce statistics, is that way back when they took some information from a Barna study actually, and they expanded it, and they blew it out of proportion so that they said 50% of all marriages end in divorce, and that actually isn't true. And a number of statisticians have unpacked that. A number of social scientists have unpacked that, and really it's closer to 28 to 31% of marriages actually end in divorce. So 70% of our marriages actually thrive and continue.
Yeah, well, that makes sense to me in my personal experience.
Really?
I don't, you know, I would say that of all the people I know, that statistic would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know, I think, at least in my circle, more people stay together than not.
Right, right.
Yeah, so that's really interesting.
So it's one thing that does is it's very disheartening to think, oh gosh, flip a coin, 50-50 shot. You know, but really when you walk down the aisle or when you stand in front of whoever to kind of cement that relationship in some sort of a formalized way, you don't sit around and think, oh gosh, you know, I hope it lasts. You know, you really feel like if anybody's going to stick together, it's going to be you and me. And so to kind of, there's very good reason, there's very solid reason for you to feel that way. And to actually take some time to actually make that happen is a lot of what I do as a relationship educator. The other myth that I think is pretty interesting is that conflict, you know, really chewing things over with somebody or bumping heads is wrong. It's bad. It indicates a mismatch. That's not true either. Conflict is inevitable.
Absolutely.
We're different people.
Yeah.
The key is not that you have conflict or how often you have conflict or that you do have conflict, but rather how you manage it and how you wade through it. You know, that's like saying, gee, I hope my child never has an accident, you know, with a potty training. That's not going to happen. It's inevitable. So you go prepared. You know, you have whatever you need to take care of that situation. Same thing with conflict. What do I need? What sort of skill set do I need? What sort of things can I pull out of my bag that's going to help in this inevitable situation? So that's another common thing, is that experiencing conflict and having screaming fights or whatever is bad. No, it's how to manage them. That's the key.
Well, that makes sense to me. I have not heard that myth, but that's fascinating to me that is one, and certainly conflict is important, and I know we teach our kids how to deal with conflict all the time, right? What you put out, you get back, and I'm sure you talk about that, you know, in marriage education, right? You talk about how to handle those conflicts, right?
Exactly. Marriage education, I would say, if I had to summarize it, would be about helping people learn and build on their skill set. It's like anything, you know, it's a skill set in anything. You know, we get a new job, get a new role, learn how to garden, you know, you do what you need to do in order to get skilled. We don't pop out knowing
Right.
everything it is that we're, that's put in front of us to do in life. Yeah.
So I think that, at least from my conversations with people, I think a lot of times people think in marriage, it should just come naturally, right? You really shouldn't have to work too hard. I hear that. I've heard people say that. It shouldn't have to be so hard. It shouldn't have to put so much work into that. What would you say about that?
I would say if you're a parent, you do a lot of Googling, you do a lot of YouTubing, you do a lot of dialoguing with friends, with family, with aunts, with uncles, with parents. How do I best take care of my toddler? What book do I read? We do put in work when it comes to raising our children very easily. But how much work or how much stock do we take about how well am I doing at this relationship stuff? And for people who are married, one man, one woman, we're talking about two different genders and two different ways of seeing the world in large measure. And there's probably a lot of overlap too. We're not from different species particularly, but sometimes it can feel like that old book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus and all that. But there are some differences, and so how much do you take stock of that and try to say, how can I be the best partner for this person? If everybody woke up in the world and said, how can I bring more joy into the world, more happiness into the world, more joy to the people that I love, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't it be great if somebody woke up every day and said, how can I make Wendy happy today, or how can I make Linda happy today? And I'm here to tell you that I know that my husband does wake up in the morning and say, what can I do to make Wendy's life easier today? And I think that if that's work, okay, then that's work. I would say it's just consciousness. I would just say it's awareness. I would just say it's willingness. I would just say it's desire to be the best that we can be in that situation. And I think that you're right. I think that we do. We watch too many movies, perhaps, that say it just should be easy. And once you fall in love, it's glue. And once the stuff comes up that isn't easy, it becomes alarming. And actually, marriages go through stages just like human beings do.
Do they?
Yeah.
What kind of stages do they? I mean, I know kids go through stages for sure of their life, so that's an interesting thought to think about. I don't know that many people think about marriages going through stages.
Well, you might. Honeymoon stage.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Right?
7-year itch.
7-year itch. So
Yeah,
those are the
ones
two.
you hear.
Yeah, those are the two.
7 years is not very long either. Yeah.
No, it isn't. But there's some really interesting data to support that between years 5 and 7, that can be a critical point where things can go south.
Really?
As well as ages 10 to 12 years, there can be some loss of intimacy and loss of connection that also make that a difficult point to navigate, that you might be more at risk for the marriage dissolving or feeling like it can dissolve. But again, it harkens back to being prepared and being aware. Mm-hmm. If you know that your child is going through, adolescence, you're going to gear up. If you know your daughter is, her body's changing, you're going to go to the store and get the right undergarments.
Right.
You do some preparatory things and you do some conversation, and that's we do that very easily. But we don't necessarily do that very easily with our marriages and relationships. And in terms of the stages, the thing that really motivated me to be sitting here today talking about this and be convinced that marriage education is so important is hearing the fact that it depends on who you read, but say the 3rd stage of marriage, it is called the power struggle. And it is extremely important, and it is predictable that you will go through a power struggle. Because in the first honeymoon stage, growing in your relationship, growing in your partnership, those stages are gluing you together and creating a team spirit. Mm-hmm. And then in the power struggle stage, it's important that you actually get some distance and begin to develop your individuality again. Like, remember the old days before I got married and I was on a bowling league? I miss those gals, or, or, I used to go surfing, or I was a hunter, or whatever it is that somebody else might be doing. And you kind of say, I want to do that stuff again. And the partner might say, but, I'll miss you, or I need you, or you should be home. But that's an important thing. And so it brings up some conflict. Mm-hmm. And the conflict can signal a lot of times, we're mismatched. This is wrong. I thought we had it going on. I thought, you're supposed to get along. And if you're in a conflict situation, it feels like it's not right, when actually it's very understandable and it's important. It's sort of like what the teacher who taught this to me back in the day was, that it's sort of like the adolescence of the marriage. If all of our adolescents said, gee, these pimples, gee, this voice is changing, gee, not getting along with my parents, I used to like my parents, now I don't. If all of that signaled to adolescents that they should just pack it in and give up on life, it's not worth it, it's too hard, where would we be?
Right.
If 50% or 30%, whatever, of all of our adolescents just packed it in? That wouldn't fly. But the difference is that you and I and society is out there saying to our teens, it's all right, this is normal, voice changing is never fun, but we coach them on and we clap them on and we encourage them and we give them support and we prod them when they need to be prodded, all that stuff. We don't necessarily do that for one another with our marriages. And I have some theories that people aren't necessarily talking as freely about those struggles with other people. They might complain about their spouse, but they don't necessarily shine a light on themselves and say, what's going on? Where can we make some improvements here? So, and that's kind of what marriage education is about, is to say there are some normal things to expect, and there are some great ways of enhancing and adding to marriages. And so, a predominance of people who entertain or actually go through divorce are doing it in that power struggle stage. And if they had just waited a bit and accepted the fact that there was a time to feel, they would be able to get through it. There are some statistics that say that if you're feeling like, oh boy, and you stick it through for 5 years, people go, oh, I don't know where that all went. But if you stick it through for 5 years, you're gonna come to another side of it, even if you don't do anything. If it just the tincture of time. But if you actually become aware and do some consciousness, if you are conscious of it and do some, take some strategies or take some classes, you're going to be that much further ahead.
So it sounds to me, as a health coach, it sounds like that's a wellness model. I think of it as a sort of prevention, right? So
yes.
If we can learn what these stages are, learn sort of what to expect, and sort of know that it's inevitable, as you say, it's going to happen, then we can prepare our mindset. Because if you go into it with the right mindset, it's different than if you go into it thinking, well, this should be easy. It used to be easy. We used to get along so well. You used to think that was funny.
Yeah.
Now you don't think that's funny, right? That kind of thing.
When did you lose your sense of humor?
Right.
Sure.
Right. So if we know what to expect, we can kind of go, oh, this might be that power struggle stage, and okay, maybe I can handle it differently. I can support my partner differently. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. And a couple of things that can signal people, if you find yourself saying, we're growing apart.
Yeah.
He's not the man that I married. I'm not the same woman that I was. Well, that's true. Imagine if you were to say, gee, where's that 6-year-old? I know they're 18 years old now, but why isn't he crawling up into my lap? Or, asking me to go out for ice cream. It's not going to happen. And we embrace the changes that our children go through. We want that change and growth and development. And we might mourn some of what used to be, and gee, they don't call as much, and I'm going to miss them when they go off to school. Sure, but we're aware of it, and we know that it's coming. We might pull the covers over our eyes once in a while, but we actually know it's coming, and we don't fight it for the most part. You don't try to keep the kid in their room and not growing. Why does it seem reasonable that that two human beings aren't changing and growing? And what a great gift to give any human being. What a great gift to receive than to have a soft place to land and have somebody that is our biggest advocate and our biggest cheerleader saying, what's next, Linda? What's going on in that pretty head of yours? And I want to hear about it. I want to know what you're struggling with, what you're excited about, where you're taking your life, and how can I be here for you as your husband or partner? That how great is that? But it's just not a conversation that's out there as much as it could be.
Absolutely.
In the world.
And are there skills you can learn? Like, are there things that you go through in education, teaching people how to, instead of the silent feeling alone and lonely and sad, and in a relationship that's not working anymore, and you don't talk about it,
Right.
because you
Right.
don't know how to talk about it? Are there
Correct.
things that you can teach people that?
Absolutely, absolutely. What I like to think of it is, core strength. How do you build core strength in the human body? You do some squats. You exercise. You go to yoga. You develop strength in your core so that your lower back is in good shape. Well, there's some core strength things to be developed in a relationship. There are some core hygiene, basic skills that are really good about learning how to communicate. And it isn't only that typical thing that people, we've all heard about is use I language. Well, that's one of a lot of different ones. And I also we didn't talk about the third one, myth, which is that talking is really the best and the only way to improve your relationship. Not really. Deeds of good service, being a kind-hearted person, looking for ways to really pump somebody up, a touch on the elbow, a wink across a crowded room, all those kind of things. You don't have to be always talking and dialoguing and having important, deep conversations with somebody. The other half, my husband's not that excited about having deep, dark conversations. I don't know about yours, but it's not a skill set necessarily that is always required. Certainly, having a productive conversations and having productive ways of getting out of scrapes is a good idea, but it's not the only way. It's not the only way to enhance and improve a relationship. So yeah, there's a lot that marriage education and a marriage educator can bring people through paces, and it's different than therapy. Different than counseling. I used to be a nurse in a clinical world. I used to take care of people with cancer and AIDS and all sorts of things. And that is what I would call the sickness model. You've got a broken person, something's going on, they've got a diagnosis that's tough, and we're going to, shore them up and fix them up and patch them up and so forth. And that's sort of what happens in marriage counseling or marriage therapy. Gee, we're in trouble. This doesn't feel right. We're worried that we're drowning here. We'd like to try to, resurrect this. Those are people that need specialized attention for something that's broken, perhaps. But by and large, most people are walking around and they just need to develop the core strength. They just need to do some squats. They just need to do some, take a good walk, with some hand weights around the block. The things that we do for normal, regular health reasons. There's some regular, normal things to do for your relationship. And so, yes, there are some skills, and there are just some attitudes and some habits to cultivate and to be aware of. And as we've talked about, to just go around blindly thinking like this should be easy because we fell in love at one point. No, it takes a little bit more than that. You fell in love with your child when you first saw them, but that doesn't mean you stopped reading books or consulting other people or talked about it.
Right. Do you think it's, I know when I'm talking about health and wellness of people, I think one thing with our health is we don't make it a priority. Everything else is a priority above and beyond. And I would definitely say that being married for a long time and raising children, that it's very easy to put that at the bottom of the priority list.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so you hear about the couples after the kids go off to college. Who are you? Who am I married to, right? Because we haven't made each other a priority.
Right. No, that's definitely a time that a lot of people do drive that last child off to college, and they look at each other and they say, this just, I don't know who you are. I don't know. We just haven't cultivated that relationship. And you've heard things like date night and, building all that in. And it sounds trite in a way, but it really is so very, very important. And there are a number of people who say that the stronger the marriage bond is, the more that trickles down, if you will, to the rest of the family, and the more secure the children feel. And there is a lot of statistics out there about the health of the relationship actually having an impact on the physical health of the people involved in that relationship, and a positive impact and effect on how children do in school, how children do with drugs and alcohol, how children do with unwanted pregnancy. Lots of things that there's just a ripple effect. So there's just every good reason to put it higher up in the priority list. I don't know, how many priorities can you have in life, I suppose.
How many priorities can you have?
Yeah,
I think that's a pretty important one. I know
right.
I studied at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and we have something we talk about was primary food and secondary food. So people would think when it comes to your health that the food you put in your body is the most important thing to talk about, but actually it's your personal happiness. And your personal happiness has a profound effect on a cellular level of your health. So you can develop disease based on your happiness factor, because you've heard about people who live into their 90s and they're smoking and drinking and whatever, but they're living the life that they've dreamed of. They're married to the person that they, is their soulmate for life or whatever it is. They're very, very happy, and it can just have a profound effect. So it seems like making your marriage, who you've decided at one point in time we're going to dedicate our life together, would be an important priority. And then another thing, so I don't mean to jump to two things, but
Yeah.
I've also, read that part of the reason that the divorce statistic is out there, or maybe the myth, maybe it's a myth, but partially is that we're living a lot longer. So it really does need to be a priority, because you're going to be married potentially for a really long time.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. No, you're totally right, that there is every reason to put this at the top, or very close to the top of your priority list, for your own personal well-being, your own turning down the volume on your stress, and the volume in the relationship. It's been the one statistic that blows me away is that people will wait 6 or 7 years. This is out there, 6 or 7 years before they go, help, we're dying on the vine here. This relationship just isn't working. Can you imagine living with low back pain for 6 or 7 years and never saying, excuse me, but it really hurts, I need to go see a doctor?
Absolutely not.
Right?
Yeah.
Or my left toe is really, I bumped it and I'm going to wait 6 or 7 years and limp on it. It just doesn't happen. But it can happen with and what's that about? Is there some shame? Is there some, I don't know. I don't really have the answers to that. But it's a very interesting thing that people wait an extraordinarily long time, and it's going to be hard to pull that back. So let's just say you've got a bad cough, and you wait 6 or 7 years, and you get the x-ray, and 2 lungs are filled with cancer. Well, if you'd started talking to your doctor 5 or 6 years ago when you first started coughing, it might be one little nodule that we could take out, right? So it's the same kind of a concept, is that, people can let these relationship things fester, and there's every reason to say, wait a minute, there's some good health habits, some good things to build into our relationship and build into the way that we regard one another that are going to help and foster it, and it's going to just roll out into so many good ways. Individual health, the health of that relationship, and the fun and the joy that you have from being in a relationship with that person that you fell in love with and walked down the aisle with in some regard, and also for the health of the people that you live with, and for the wider community. I mean, there's just all upsides to taking good care and paying attention.
Yeah, I really like what you said earlier, because I talk about, in my health classes, I talk about every morning waking up with a gratitude ritual or prayer, right? Some kind of, if I'm feeling grateful, if I'm saying out loud or inside, what I'm grateful for, it's very hard to wake up and not feel good, and you're being grateful. So that whole idea of what can I do to help support my spouse? What can I do to help them be happier? What can I do to, I think that's a really beautiful way to approach any relationship, but particularly marriage. I think that makes a lot of sense, and because we do it pretty naturally with our kids. Like, we wouldn't even think about approaching parenting for the most part in any other way, but we don't necessarily look at marriage that way. So I really, that's one of the best things. I just really love that.
I have a great demonstration of that I've heard about in more than one place, about a man that went to his wife and he said, it's time, I really want a divorce. And she was just shocked, sad, just really sad. And she said, I will give you the divorce in 30 days. And what I'm asking of you is the only thing that you need to do, and I will give it to you in 30 days if you still want it, is I want you to pick me up and carry me across the threshold every day for 30 days. That's all I ask of you. And he was like, really? And as you might imagine, it did turn their relationship around. Just that demonstration and that care and devotion, a very physical act. They didn't talk, they didn't do anything. It was just, that was her requirement. And I'm not sure, is this an urban myth that I've read? I don't know. But it makes it just demonstrates that there's a quality of just being kind and thinking of someone else first without a lot of talk that can really make a profound difference. So wind it back a little bit. You know, maybe you're not thinking about divorce, maybe you're not thinking about running out of the house, but think about what is it today that I can do that's just going to make this person feel like they're the best thing ever. Because I'm telling you, at the office, they're probably not getting somebody running around saying, I wonder how we can make Linda feel like the best person here at the office.
Right.
Right? You know, but at home with the person that we've married, that's kind of what we dreamed and we hoped for. So we need to be that, as opposed to sitting around waiting for the other person to be. How can we be that for somebody else? So.
Absolutely. And model it for our kids, and
Totally.
they will hopefully model it to the next generation. So then what exactly is, so marriage education, it's a wellness model.
Yes.
Sort of tell us, I guess, you know, what it is and where can people go to find out more about how do I learn these tools and skills if I now want to practice the wellness model and I want to get into that situation?
Right.
What do I do? Where do I go?
Right. Well, you can go to my website, which is www.connectagain.org, where I will have various programs that I have running. I'm building some programs that are going to be strictly online so that you don't have to be in this general area of Massachusetts to take a part in that. And there's also, I do work with individual people I coach them on how to have a really productive conversation. So I teach them skills in a very concentrated, intense way. Both my husband and I actually do that. We co-coach with another couple on a particular model of how to have a really good, productive conversation when those are necessary, and they are necessary on occasion, where things just seem like we're just not seeing eye to eye. No matter how we approach this subject, this content, we can never really get beyond it. So so going to that website, and I also have a resources or learn more page where I really pump up some of the my heroes and my models of who's out there in the field that's really doing good work. And another place that I would say is to drive people to is www.mightymarriedmoms.com, which is a project that you and I are working on with another woman named Debbie Owen, who's a parent coach. And we really are excited about equipping women to be mighty and married and be good moms. So we're having a good time with that and talking to a lot of really interesting people. So those are a couple of resources.
Great. Well, thank you, Wendy. This has been really, really interesting and really fun to talk to you today.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate yours.